Hello, I'm Talon the Edgy Skater. I'm excited to make this video for you today. I wanted to jump straight in to myths about adult skaters. As you know, I like to help adult skaters in particular, and I am a returning former competitive adult skater myself. And as adults, whether you are brand new to skating or you did it at some point in your life and you're now coming back, or maybe you stayed with it the whole way through. Congratulations if that's the case for you. There's some unique um, perceptions and sometimes obstacles or challenges that are specific to adult skaters. And I'd like to go over some of the myths, the bull that people believe. And maybe depending on the rink that you started at or the people you're around, maybe some of these myths are the only thing you've ever heard and you believe them to be true. So I'm here to set the record straight and expose these myths for exactly what they are. Nonsense. Okay, so in no particular order. Um, Number one, there is this very big, I'm going to call it a misunderstanding about the physical limitations of adults as far as uh, if I'm an adult, especially if I never skated before, uh, can I ever get a single axle? Can adults do double jumps? Um, can adults do all of the spin positions? Can adults do flying spins? Things like that. So, I understand that adult is a very big age range. It's literally anything. I think I don't I'm gonna say 21 just to be safe. Um, 21 to like 100. So of course there's going to be people in those ages with different physical abilities based on what their body is capable of. However, big fat however, there are adults that did not skate as kids who are now working on triple jumps. I recently heard about a man who just had his, I think it was 40th or 41st birthday, and he just landed his first triple axel. And in my humble opinion, there's no, generally speaking, physiological reason why an adult skater cannot get all of their spins, uh, standard positions and flying spins, as well as double jumps up to and including double axel. A lot of people are going to want to argue about this. But there is no reason why most any adult cannot get at least a single axle. And if you can get a single axle, you can probably get your double cell, your double toe. If you like edge jumps, you're going to like double loop. And once you get to that point, double flip and double lutz are not that different. It's not that big of a leap, so to speak. So I want to put the rest right there. That unless you have certain severe physical limitations, or some sort of like really severe like osteoporosis or some kind of risk where you can't handle falling. And so long as you don't have things like very severe scoliosis or some kind of skeletal misalignment issues that are severe enough, things of that nature, there's no reason why, in my opinion, the average adult skater can't get at least a single axle if they want to go the freestyle route. And there's no reason they can't get all their basic spin positions. Can't do some creative spin positions, because the great thing about those is you can modify them to your body, even if you do have some kind of physical limitation. And of course, from there, you can do your flying spins, your combination spins. So I'm going to say that's probably one of the biggest myths out there, is that adults have to stick with beginner learn to skate stuff, and that's all they'll ever be able to do. That is nonsense. There are adults doing everything you can think of, and you can probably do more than you realize you can do. Age is not what the issue is here. And even if you are older and you haven't skated before, and you wonder, like, okay, if I'm just starting in my 20s or in my 30s, if I wanted to get double jumps, is it going to break my body down too much? Am I going to be able to physically last long enough to go through the learning process of these jumps? And yes, everyone's bodies are different, but generally speaking, broad stroke speaking, yes. And it doesn't have to take you, 10 or 20 years to do it. So that's my number one thing right there. Yes, there are a lot of cool stuff you can do as an adult. You don't have to be limited to basic learn to skate skills and single jumps only if you don't want to. Big myth number 2. Adults can't get flexible enough. It kind of ties in with number 1 to an extent. But because I'm an adult, I can't get a Bielmann spin or a needle spin, or I won't be able to get a really high spiral, or I won't be able to, get my splits, or any other types of skills, certain other maneuvers on the ice that require a lot of different kinds of flexibility and backbend. Figure skating over the last 2.5 or so decades has taken on a lot of contortionism. However, so long as you are training properly, safely off ice, with someone who understands contortionism and acrobatics, you can, over time, develop a very wide range of flexibility and motion you probably can't believe that you have within you. Now, of course, if this process is rushed or the people around you don't really know how to help someone reach that and they're just trying to force you in positions, that's not going to work. You have a very high chance of getting injured, and depending what that injury is, that could really hinder or potentially stunt the process. But simply being an adult over 18, that's not going to stop you. There are people who pick up yoga in their 50s who get into different kinds of yoga that end up being able to do handstands, back bends, all kinds of cool, more dance acrobatic like positions. It's not so much about age, once again. It's about training right, which is largely about training safely, consistency, and working with people who know what they're doing to help you achieve your dreams. So, no, there does not have to be an intrinsic limit on adult flexibility simply because they are adults, even though, yes, for many, not even all, but many children, they have a little bit more mobility naturally, largely because the bones, the joints, they're still growing and fusing in the first place. It does not mean that you can't achieve similar or, depending what it is, identical results as an adult with a body who's fully formed. All right. Let me see. Myth number 3. because I am an adult, I can't compete like the skaters I saw on TV. Okay, so I'm going to break this down two ways. There's adult specific competitions you can do, which includes international competitions. You don't have to be limited domestically. If you want to be a competitive adult and compete in other countries, you can. There is an equivalent of an adult Worlds, and they're working on an equivalent of an adult Olympics. If you want to compete in the mainstream track, the standard track of figure skating, this is basically the competitive track that the people you see on TV, they are part of. Because if you notice, most of them, they're over 18. They are technically adults, but they're not competing in adult competitions. They're competing in standard track competitions. As an adult, you can compete in those also. Now, the competition will probably be stiffer, and there'll be a lot more competitors in a given flight or group in a competition. But you can compete standard track. You are allowed to do that. And if your goal is to go to a standard track National Qualifying Series competition or NQS competition, formerly what we would consider like a regionals or sectionals kind of competition, you potentially can. It's just going to it's going to be the more demanding route because you're going to compete against whoever shows up, and that more likely than not is going to include a kid who's probably been doing it since they were a toddler or slightly older. But you can do it. You are allowed. Was this myth number 4? 4 now? I really have to keep better count of these things. Next myth. Because I'm an adult, there's certain kinds of like turns and footwork that I'm not going to be able to do because I'm not going to have basically the speed, strength, or stamina to do it. Okay, so this is another cool thing about adults where there is an adult track and there is a standard track. When you do adult tests, it's based off the standard track to an extent, but it's usually modified to be a little bit easier, and the judging criteria is a little bit different. But you can take standard track former moves in the field. I think they're just called skating skills tests now. You can do it. Ice stance is ice stance. There's no real adult equivalent for that. It just is what it is. And pairs. You can take standard pairs tests too. If you want to go down the standard track of skating skills, there is nothing in the rule book that stops you from doing it. And just because you're an adult, it doesn't have to necessarily take you longer to get those skills. Because we're basically looking at edge work and power skating. And those are dependent on a few things. It's dependent on your ability to control the alignment between your ankles, hips, and shoulders. It's largely about the amount of ankle pressure you can apply when to either the center back or center front part of the blade, depending on the move and the curve and the step that you're doing. So whoever can do that efficiently, that's where your power is going to come from. It's where your edge quality is going to come from. And the timing of that is going to determine what kind of momentum you have to work with or not. Because if you're doing most of these steps correctly, you can actually come out with more speed and momentum you had after they're done than you did going in. But those things, they're not about age. It's about sensitivity to the blade, understanding the shape you're trying to make, and being able to hold the positions, those alignment on axis skating positions, and transitioning from them smoothly. That's not age specific. In fact, I believe that a lot of adults on a physiological level have an advantage when it comes to this. Um, the disadvantage a lot of adults have is the psychological obstacle of fear of falling, um, maybe fear of self-consciousness issues. But for adults, it's more of a psychological test. Physiologically speaking, I actually think adults have a huge advantage in this category for the most part if they would allow themselves to access it. But even very complicated footwork, we could take snippets from like an ice dance routine. Not talking about as a couple, but the solo version of it. Most adults, I believe, could theoretically, if training time and on an off ice training time and injuries are not issues, I think most adults could actually do it or get very very close to that level, which is great because there's a lot of standard track freestyle skaters that do not spend the time on training those particular things, so they don't even get close to that level necessarily. But if you wanted to make your journey about skating skills, again, with the right training and understanding the physics of what you're doing, the mechanics behind what you're doing, adults can absolutely do it. I believe they have an advantage. Another myth. As an adult skater, I can't have a career on the ice skating. Um, Competitive career on standard track, that that's where it gets more unlikely. That's where you hear people go, "Oh, you're an adult, so you're not going to be able to do X, Y, Z." A lot of them are thinking standard track. Um, yes, while there are adult competitions, don't really consider adult competing a career. But if you want a career in the performing side of skating, something to do with shows, um, I'm not talking about like coaching, but as far as like actually skating for a living, you do have an option of trying to become a professional show skater. It's just going to be a matter of getting your skating skills up to a respectable caliber that they are looking for, which I do believe is within a lot of people's abilities to get in the rounds of, if not actually exceed. And uh, you can go in that kind of direction. There's nothing technically stopping an adult from having the capacity to become a professional show skater or go in the choreography direction. It's not an age thing that's going to be the real determining factor here. So if that's something you really want to do, you train really hard, you get your skills up, you start understanding musicality really well because they're going to want that, and you start training yourself on how to pick up choreography pretty fast because they're going to want to see that too, and working on your expressiveness in general, your artistry. Yes, an adult can absolutely have a career as a show skater or even as a professional choreographer if that's something they really wanted. All right, I'm not even going to count anymore. Another myth about adults. Probably going to end up with a part two of this, but okay. This is going to kind of like tie into some of the other things. I've met a lot of adults who go, "Oh, I like the feeling of this, but I'm never going to look good doing it." You can look like you've been doing this your whole life. The things that are going to determine that are sort of things we've already discussed. Understanding the mechanics that go into really good edge quality and power skating. That's going to probably include a certain amount of off ice work to be able to develop the strength and understand the right postures to then be able to hold those when we start applying different kinds of things like velocity and centrifugal force to it. than applying the actual forces in skating. But between understanding, pressure and body alignment, taking dance, I strongly recommend people explore dance as a very big complementary aspect to their skating if they are able. You can look professional level in time, especially again if you have the right people behind you backing your skating skills. The right coaches, good off ice team or dance instructor who understands what you're trying to do and the anything unique about your body. So, big myth is simply by default of being an adult, I'm always going to look choppy or rough or unpolished. That's nonsense. You could look like you've been doing this your whole life and be an incredibly artistic and gifted skater. In fact, I went to a show recently, not even 2 weeks ago, where there was an adult skater skating less than, I think, 3 years. She had some of the best artistry in the entire show. In a few more years, when certain other aspects of her skating skills, moves type stuff catch up to her level of artistry and expression, she's going to be a wicked amazing skater that people are going to swear did it since, day one of her life. So these things are possible and they can be trained. There's this big thing with not specifically adults, people in general. You have to be really, really talented or else you're going to suck or you're going to look like you suck forever. Talent helps. Talent is not the be all end all. Training hard, understanding the what, where, whys of what you're doing, and being consistent with it, that's what matters. Talent is nothing if it's untrained. And talent doesn't guarantee anything without a lot of consistency and discipline behind it. And if you have virtually no talent, it just might mean you need to take things a little bit slower, or it might take a little while for things to catch on. But it doesn't mean they're not achievable. It absolutely doesn't mean that. It just might mean it might be a different road to achievement depending what your issue is. So this is kind of in that same idea of things. I'm a dyslexic. As I'm sure you can imagine, that was a nightmare in ice dance. And the people I had, they did not understand learning disabilities or anything like that. It was not a forgiving environment. It was either this is the right way, and anything short of that, it's not good. We don't like it. We do not approve. Um, and that's something that I'm going to be working out a lot in my own journey now is getting a better handle on dyslexia um, in ice dance and while skating on beat, not the off beat, but on beat, the main beat with music. But even though I'm not particularly talented in that, and in fact, I'm actually learning disabled when it comes to that, it doesn't mean that there's not workarounds and ways that can be improved on and improved to the point where other people can't tell the difference that an obstacle ever existed there. So those are, we'll consider this part one of adult myths, but I wanted to leave you with these encouraging and positive, food for thought items. I don't want you to feel limited because of age. Age is not the main determining thing here. It's much more about honoring whatever kind of path your journey needs to take, getting the right education, loving the thing enough to stick with it, loving yourself enough to be forgiving and rewarding of yourself when you do any sort of small wins, any sort of steps towards your goal. And even when you feel like you're not actually making progress towards the goal, simply because you're showing up and doing it, that's still more than if you didn't show up and do it the day before. It's still something. It's still adding up and counting to something. It's still momentum. And if you keep the momentum going, it's going to keep adding up and building to something at some point. It really is. And again, as I get more physically able myself, I will get on the ice. I will start demonstrating different learning hacks, things that, yes, I was taught when I was a competitive skater, but things that clicked later for me, and things that I also kind of played around with myself to create some cool learning hacks and different ways to go about it, depending on different bodies. Because that's a whole other thing. I'll leave it as a teaser. Not going to get into it right now. But sometimes different bodies need different things for different reasons, mechanically and structurally. And I've dedicated the last couple years of my life really, really trying to dig deep on why those differences are and what skating approaches might work best for which ones. So I'm not going to explain it too much more than that. I want it to be a surprise, but we will get to it. You are awesome. Your skating is awesome, and you are only going to continue to improve the more you stick with this and be nice to yourself. All right. Have a good evening. Bye.